Hey, CPAs and future CPAs, welcome back to CPA Diversity. It's Christopher Johnson, CPA and Certified Information Security Professional, and we are back with another CPA Diversity interview with Miss Ebony Moss. She is a CPA working in the tax area, and we had a great discussion about what it means to be a CPA, what it means to be an African-American CPA, what we need to do to attract more young minorities and African-Americans to the profession of accounting and the CPA designation. We talked about the study process. We talked about the study process for the CPA exam and Ebony's journey through studying and passing the exam. Benefits of having mentors. We talked about NABA. We talked about a lot of different things, a lot of good topics, and Ebony had a lot of good stuff to contribute to the discussion. So I really appreciate her participation. I appreciate you for watching. Make sure that you like this video. Make sure that if you're not already subscribe to CPA Diversity. We got tons more content coming right at you. Also, make sure you comment. I want to know what you think about the video. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you think you want to see next. Tell me what was most valuable in the discussion that you got from it. We're here to bridge the gap to attract more young minorities to the profession of accounting. African Americans are the smallest, or one of the smallest representations in the profession. They represent less than 1%, I think maybe less than 1% of cultures in the accounting profession. And we want to communicate how great a profession this is. So that's what this video is about. It's coming right at you. Enjoy, and I know you're gonna like it. All right, I'll see you on the other side. I am Chris Johnson. This is CPA Diversity, where we are redefining what it means to be a minority in business and more specifically in the profession of accounting. Today I have with me Miss Ebony Moss, a CPA, and she is going to talk with me and share her experience as a CPA, and we get some insight into who she is and what she does as a professional accountant. So hi Ebony, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. I'm excited about everything that you're doing, and hopefully I can contribute to the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the goal here. We want to be able to contribute to not only this conversation, but to the community. And we're going to do that by talking about what it means for you to be are African-American, right? African-American CPA?
Yeah.
African-American CPA. So maybe we can just start with your journey, which led you to the profession of accounting and wanting to become a CPA. Do you mind just sharing your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So since I can remember, I wanted to be a veterinarian. That was always my goal in life. I went to magnet schools for middle school and high school. I'm from Miami, Florida. So both in Miami that focused on zoology or ag science or things of that nature. I actually even picked the University of Florida as my college career choice, just because they have an amazing vet school. I had the opportunity to visit a vet school. I interned at a veterinarian clinic. So that was always just my intention for my love and passion for animals.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I got to UF, in freshman year, I took biology, and I was like, yeah, this is not gonna work out. So it was just more, I guess, intense than I expected, in the sense that this wasn't the part that I really enjoyed. It was just more sort of the caring for animals. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, I have always had an interest in business as well. So they also have an amazing business school at the University of Florida. Go Gators. Mm-hmm. And so I took just kind of an intro to accounting course, and which was the mandatory just kind of course selection for business majors. And I always wanted to just kind of have a minor in business, regardless of if I wanted to be a veterinarian or not, just because I think it's just, important to have that type of background. Mm-hmm. And what really sparked me in terms of getting into this profession, and more specifically anything dealing with, business, finances, kind of the background, the running of business, was years ago, Tavis Smiley on BET, he had a show, talk show at night. And so he had two African-American women on there, financial planners, speaking to the lack of financial literacy or understanding in the African American community. And it was just very, impactful for me. It was something that I was just like, wow, is this something that I can really contribute to? That's something that I could really help with. And so, that's what led me ultimately to get into business. And then once I was in there, that led me to the accounting class, which then I was just like, oh, okay, this is cool. And mind you, both of my aunts are accounting majors. One works for the IRS. So it's not that I wasn't aware of the profession, it just wasn't really something that really interested me because I already kind of figured I knew what I wanted to do apparently. Mm-hmm. But going into that class and then, having some upperclassmen say, yeah, don't do accounting, it's so challenging here, it's, it's super hard. And so I was just like, okay, well, I'm up for the challenge. So definitely just pursued that. I ended up graduating with a business degree from the University of Florida and then going on to do my master's in taxation at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia, which then I was involved with NABA all through college, National Association of Black Accountants, and went to conferences and had a great opportunity to get exposed to what the profession was and, seeing Black folks in the profession and knowing that this was something that was attainable and also just a fulfilling profession. And so, ultimately interned with Big Four. So that's kind of my path and my journey from schooling all the way through really joining the profession as an intern and then ultimately as a full-time staff.
Got it. So then what led you to wanting to be a CPA?
So that was the goal. Once I knew, okay, I'm going to be in accounting, it was kind of the progression, right? It was just like, hey, in order to, I think more so the narrative, I should say, when I was in college was, in order to be successful in this profession, you have to be a partner at a Big Four firm. That was really kind of what they were pushing. Yes. I think that's what they push at a lot of schools, to be honest, right? Like that's the path that you take. And that's the ultimate measure of success. In order to be a partner, you need to have your CPA license to move up. In most firms, you needed to even make manager. So that was just something that was a necessity, to be honest, in order to do it. And then along my journey, I had, several people just not even in my firm that was just like, listen, if you're going to be in this profession, you need to get your license. Like that's just something that is just, it doesn't make sense to spend all this time, energy, and effort. And as you know, this is not necessarily a 9-to-5 profession. So you're spending all this time, right? You spend all this time, energy, and effort, and they're just like, in order to really reap the rewards, in a sense, it just only makes sense to get it. And I heard them, and I was like, yeah, no, I know I'm going to do it. And I semi-attempted the first time, and I say that because I signed up for it. I went to Becker classes, but I didn't really spend the time I needed to do it. So I was unsuccessful my first go around. But, ultimately just got to a point where literally my friend at my firm, she was the one, I tell her this story all the time. She was the one, I was just in her office just one day and she was just like, why don't you have your license? And I was just like, oh my gosh, there's something else to do. I gotta, it's all this stuff I have to do for work and, just adulting and, the time. And she was just like, well, what else are you going to do outside of accounting, outside of the profession? And I was like, I don't know. So she was like, so that means that you're going to be in accounting till you figure that out if you do decide to do anything different. And I was like, yeah. So she was like, so then that means you need to get your license. And it was literally that moment. Again, other people had told me this, but it was in that moment, which is kind of, I heard it when I needed to hear it, I guess.
Right.
So it was just like perfect timing. And that's really what got me into gear. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And that's really what got me into gear. And at that time I was, that was really what was holding me back from making manager at my firm as well, was getting my license. So that's really what ultimately kind of pushed me over the edge to kind of say, hey friends, I love y'all. I'll see y'all on the other side of studying, but I got to get this done, right? So, and the thing is, they're accountants, so they understood. I didn't get any, any flack for it. So, I just went ahead and pushed forward and got that done.
Good. I want to stop you right there. Good. Because you said a lot of things that I think are very important for us to kind of dig into a little bit more.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, you said that your aunts were accountants. And I was reading in an article somewhere, one of those articles out there about why there's a lack of minorities in the profession when they surveyed like a group of minorities. And what they found was that in in these minority communities, you know, like specifically like Black African Americans, most of the time when you have someone who goes into the profession of accounting, it's because they had some exposure to it through a family member. So you said you've got two aunts who do accounting, right? One works for IRS.
So both of them, their sisters, my dad's sisters, they have their accounting degrees from Florida State University. Do better, but so one aunt works for the IRS, and she's worked for the IRS her whole career. The other aunt, she's actually in education, so she didn't pursue the profession even once she graduated. But even my aunt that works for the IRS, and I knew both of them had their accounting degrees, but it wasn't something that. And sorry, auntie, but it's not something that, you know, people are like, oh, you know, I want to go work for the IRS per se, you know, out of college necessarily. So it wasn't like this, for lack of a better word, like this sexy job or even just a sexy profession.
Oh, right.
You know, people don't think, oh, accounting. Yeah. So, yeah, so I had exposure to it, but it didn't ever cross my mind to be an accountant. And again, part of that too was that I, at that moment, felt like I knew what it was that I wanted to do. So I wasn't open to suggestions anyway. So that's really what that was.
Oh, okay. And then ultimately what happened was you had to get your own experience, right? Even though they were trying to tell you at the time, this is a good profession, it wasn't until you were ready that the door kind of opened for you.
Exactly, there you go.
So then another thing you mentioned was that it was a challenging, your class members had said that accounting could be challenging, right? Like that's the thing that they tell you out. Because I remember when I was in school, accounting was like one of the smallest majors, and I always thought that's because it's pretty challenging to study,
right?
And you know go through the studying of learning what to do and being accounting. So I think that it's all, but with me, it's always been like everything's a challenge. You know, it's just a matter of determining whether you're willing to do it and get through it. So I thought that was very interesting that you brought that up because I had the same kind of things happen to me when I was in school as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
We talked about NAWA, which is something we can go through, and then you talked about another good thing you mentioned was that you thought that it was good to get the CPA license because typically when you are going to go work for these companies, you can't be a manager or even a partner without it, right?
Right.
And that's definitely something that I've learned as well through my experience with working with Big Four and some of the smaller firms that I've worked for. Okay, so here's a good segue that I always like to talk about the study process for the CPA. Can you tell me what that was like for you?
Okay, so I'm very self-aware, okay? So I know I am a procrastinator, and I know that, kind of giving myself the leeway to kind of do this on my own was probably not the best approach. And so that's why I did Becker. And Deloitte paid for Becker, you just sign up and, they pay for it up front and everything. And so there was no reason to really not do Becker. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do the in-person classes so that way I'm accountable. I got to show up every Saturday, and it was all day on Saturdays. You're like in your 20s and you're living in Atlanta, you're like, okay, but I could be doing all these things. Yeah. Not to say that I would be doing all these things, because my friends, if they watch this, they'll be like, but you're a homebody, so don't do that. But it's still the fact that I could have been if I wanted to, right? Right. I did the in-person classes, and which was, it was great because I actually met people in those classes that I'm still connected with to this day, and who ultimately went and got their CPAs and all that kind of stuff. So it was just also a great opportunity from that standpoint. So I did it. But again, I wasn't committed to the process. I really genuinely wasn't committed to the process. And so even once I got done with the Becker, because it's really genuinely like where you're supposed to take this section in terms of studying and then take the section of the CPA, it only makes sense. I'll sit there and, kind of ran through all these sections of Becker. I was like, okay, now I'm going to take the test. That's not really kind of why it's set up that way. Mm-hmm. And then for those of you all who don't know, with the CPA exam, you take each section separately. So, it only makes sense to plan it out where you take the Becker class, take some time to study a few weeks, and then go ahead and take that section and kind of rinse and repeat for 3 more times for 4 parts. And so at the end of the day, I went into some of these tests literally not even studying, just being like my notice to schedule you only get so much time to take this once you sign up for it.
Right.
It's going to expire. So let me just go in and see, you know, money's been paid. Let me go in and see what they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And so obviously it was not successful. That's not how this works. And so again, like I didn't revisit that process. So once I really was committed to the process, after having that conversation with my coworker and friend, then I was like, okay, I'm going to get new materials. So I just got the books. I didn't take Becker all over again. And well, I'll take it with the books and stuff. You have the self-study classes. So I didn't go in and take Becker in a sense of going into the classes, the library.
Yeah,
right, exactly. So I did listen to it, but I'm also the type of person I like to highlight and write notes and note cards and stuff like that. So that's how I ended up ultimately studying and successfully passing the test, because that's what worked for me. And I did do it on my own for the most part. There were times where I did study with friends, but a majority of it was just self-study and in isolation in a sense.
Yeah, so what did that look like specifically, your self-study? I self-study too, so I kind of have an idea, just so we can share.
Yeah, so self-study really looks like, hey, you know, I'm working however many hours, right? Because that doesn't stop. Like, you know, nobody's saying, hey, you know, your hours going to get scaled back so you can study for this exam. It's like, you know, that's what we do in this profession. So either you do it, some people do it, you know, right after school, some people do it while they're working. And just so people know, the further you move up in this profession, the more responsibility you have, so the harder it is. And so at this point, I'm a supervisor role. Because at our firm, it's associate, senior, supervisor, manager, senior manager, director, or partner. And so I'm a supervisor at this time. And again, in order for me to make manager, I need to get this license, you know, to get promoted. So I had a lot of responsibility. It's not that I had all of this kind of free time at work to study. I didn't have any of that, you know, at all. So this was all me coming home after work and, you know, really having pep talks with myself, like, okay, you got to do something today. I don't know what it is, but something has to get done today.
Yeah.
And so really kind of just staying the course and being like, hey, you know, in order to make this happen, I have to be committed. So again, just saying, hey, friends, love y'all, but I'm not going to doing anything for the next couple months until I get this thing knocked down.
I think that's good too that you say that, because one of the things that I've always said to anybody who's ever asked me about studying for the exam is like, you literally have to make some sacrifices. You're gonna have to cut your friends off. You've got to really commit to it. So I think it's good that you said that, because
absolutely. And I think you have to do that, but also having the mindset that this is only temporary, right? Because you know, you tell people that and they're like, what? Like, you know, I got one life to live. I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna have a good time. I'm young. And I get that, but it's also saying, okay, I'm gonna make an investment in myself now to reap the rewards later, right? I'm gonna plant the seed now for the tree to grow. Absolutely. So it's definitely something where you have to say, this is just a temporary, and I talk to myself about this with anything. This is literally a temporary situation. You don't have to live in this space forever. And when I'm encouraging my coachees or folks at work that are doing this, like, hey, at some point you're gonna get over this hump. And you're gonna look back and you're gonna be like, I don't even know what to do with all this free time that I have now. You know, I literally remember the day after I passed the exam, sitting on my bed when I came home from work, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with myself. So, but when you're doing it in isolation, again, it's really you saying, hey, I gotta knock this out, because if I don't, then I'm gonna be in this space kind of forever. And so in order to say I'm gonna have a successful run at this, and my weekends were literally studying all day at home. I would go, again, if I did study with friends, that's the only time I really, you know, went outside of my house to study. But other than that, I was studying at home. I was in studying in my bed. I wasn't sitting at a table and all this kind of stuff. And I had my music going.
Yeah.
I'll have background noise. And, you know, if I didn't understand something while I'm studying, I'd go to the disc to say, let me just, you know, listen to this piece of it. But it was definitely a lot of isolation. And I think that's part of a struggle, to be honest, with some folks, is that they need that group kind of study system, especially if you're coming out of school and you're used to that. Right. So a lot of people do study in groups. I studied a ton in groups when I was in school. And so, you know, if you're used to that, that's probably a struggle for some people. So if that's the case, you know, find a tribe of people that you can study with, whether that's folks at work, whether that's, if you have friends that are in the profession, you know, you all get together and do it together. But I would just say, make sure that you figure out what works for you, or if it's a combination. just do that so that you're not putting yourself in a box and say, okay, this is the only way to study. Because if ultimately you probably won't be successful because you're not going to put in the effort to do it.
Yep. You're right about that. You definitely need to figure out what works for you. How many hours did you think you studied after like work or on the weekends?
So like on the weekends, a Saturday and Sunday, I mean, it'd definitely be like 8 to 10 hours. Take a break, get something to eat, take a nap.
Yeah. Do something mental kind of release.
Right. The good thing was when I was studying, and I hate to say this much because I feel like I'm gonna sound kind of old, but it's not like we had like all this Netflix and Hulu and stuff. So I wasn't, and I'm a binge watcher, so I think I would have been struggling in this space to do it today. But I didn't have like, it was like your show came on, during this week, and I didn't have TV and all that kind of stuff.
So you can really focus. You can have less distractions to focus.
Right, exactly.
I understand, because sometimes when I'm working, I'm like, I know Netflix just dropped a new season of like.
Exactly.
It just needs to skip.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, very good. Okay, awesome. So then what order did you take the exam?
Okay, so I was like, I'm going to build up my confidence. So I'm a tax professional. I'm in the tax space. And so I took regulation first because I was like, Ebony, if you can't do this, I don't know what to tell you, right? So I took regulation first, just to say, hey, let me pass this, get this knocked out the park. Mind you, I still study hard because even though I'm in a tax space, at that time I wasn't, a senior manager. And then 2, I don't do everything in tax either.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was tax law, like, and all this kind of stuff. So I still had to study, hard for that exam. But I knocked that out the park and, puff out my chest. And I'm like, okay, I can do this, all right, that's what I needed to really kind of, get this momentum going. And like, let me just ride this wave.
Mm-hmm.
And then so next I did, so it's audit for
BC.
Next I did audit next. I did audit. I was like, okay, I'm going to try. Let me do audit because audit is not what I do. That's what it was. Yeah. Audit was not what I'd done. So let me just go ahead and, now I got a little bit of confidence going in. And when I tell you audit was a struggle for me.
It's different from tax, that's for sure.
Because I didn't even, at that point, I hadn't even taken an audit class. Like I've never taken an audit class in my whole educational career, like in undergrad nor grad. So audit was something completely foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't have to. And so with the path that I chose, and so with that being said, that was a struggle, but got over audit. Then I did FAR next, which is FAR is, normally the beast that people kind of talk about trying to tame.
Yes.
So I did FAR next, and that one I was just like, that one I like passed by the hair on my chin, but I passed. Right? So I was just like, listen, it don't even matter. Like they said, if you got, that was my regulation score. They were like, you did the most. You studied way too much for this. You put too much effort. And so I did FAR next, and then BEC was the last one, and that was the one like with the formulas and just BEC was like that one that just has all this miscellaneous.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Overall general business knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think there's a consensus that that's the easiest one of the 4.
Yeah.
But I think it also too depends, right? Like maybe reg was the easier one for you.
That was right. See, reg was the easier one for me. BEC was a struggle because it was just like I felt like it was all over the place, and it was just all the formulas, and I'm like, sir, I'm not gonna be trying to memorize all these formulas. So I approached BEC from a standpoint of, what all these formulas was, what am I trying to get to? What answer am I trying to get to? And then whether I remember the formula or not, let me try to just back into it. That's the approach I took with BEC.
Yeah. You gotta get creative with some of these things.
Yeah, I was like, we just have to figure this out another way because these formulas are not gonna work for you, girl. So so BEC was the last one that I took.
Good. Well, congratulations, although I know you've been certified for a long time now. That's a good accomplishment for anyone, and it takes a lot of studying, and that's the one thing that I learned as well going through that process. So I always love to hear people who have gone through the process share their stories, so I can hear the similarities, because it sounds like we all have these similar experiences.
Right.
Like you got to go lock yourself in a hotel room or a cage somewhere, with a bunch of books, and just kind of dive in.
Exactly.
It teaches you a lot about yourself, right? You spend the time, and not everybody does the self study, right? Some people go to the live courses, some people use the online courses, and then some people like the books. Like I use the hard books as well, and then I had an online portal that I could go and use and do all the questions and answer look at the videos and things like that. So it all really depends on what works best for you.
Right.
And it's definitely an experience that you're very proud of once you come out on the other side.
Right.
So how did you feel when you got like everything done? Like what was it? Take me through how you felt once you know you passed off work parts.
So I remember I was sitting in bed and it was like, okay, so I also like used to troll in a good way, in the sense that I was just kind of like lurking. I didn't post anything on another71.com. So I don't know if you ever use that. So it's basically like a website where folks who are all taking the exam can kind of really kind of share their experiences, and then also people are on there just kind of counting down till when score release was going to happen.
Okay.
And so I spent a lot of time. Another71.com.
So I can get it afterwards, but yeah. I've never heard of that.
So yeah, just like another time, so another 71. So that website was great because that was almost kind of my accountability and my kind of, it was almost like the Facebook for like CPA, people doing the CPA exam. That's really what it was. Like a message board. And so I remember like kind of going, so you would go on and you would just hit refresh because they'd be, California scores are released, Arizona scores are released. People, just kind of talk about, these scores are released. I'm like, okay, all right, Georgia, come on, Georgia, when this, when it's gonna drop. So it was late at night and I just had my computer. I had another 71 on one screen and I had the score, had signed in to get my score on the other screen. So I'm just refreshing. And so finally it came up. And I just like, and the thing was so crazy, like I visualized this number in my head. And I know it sounds, people say, it's cheesy, but when I tell you I visualized, I was like, I'm going to visualize me opening up the screen, hitting refresh, and this number popping up as my score. It was that number.
Wow.
Like on the dot. so it was just like and then I was just like, because I'm like, I know this is going to happen, like I'm going to be done. And and mind you, I was living by myself. I'm like screaming into the sheets because I'm like screaming loud. I was just so excited that this process, this journey was done. And then also just proud that I stayed committed to the course too, right? Even with working and everything. And so it was really just, an excitable moment. And like I said, the next day coming home from work and literally sitting on a bed and just being like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do, because these past couple months have just been working and studying. So any free time was studying. So I'm just like, so I ended up taking a nap, by the way. But it was just a great feeling of just pride and accomplishment, and just knowing that everything that I had done and the people that really put I didn't do this by myself. People really put time, energy, and effort into me as a professional in my development. It's just like, it was just great to really kind of see that all come to fruition. And I was just happy to share the news with all of those folks.
Yes. It's very good, very proud moments afterwards.
Absolutely.
So then, what do you think in your career, the experiences that you've had in your career after you passed the exam, that was the most beneficial for you as a result of going through that study process and eventually becoming a CPA?
So for me, and it was great to get promoted, because I got promoted to manager once I passed. I passed in October and was promoted mid-year in January, effective January 1 of the next year. And so it was great to, get that promotion to move up, of course, but that wasn't the proudest. The thing that for me has really been the most valuable with me getting my license is the exposure and the access to opportunities. And so, you can move up in the firm, and I'm not knocking anybody's process. Some people just, hey, I want to work, I want to come home. Maybe you have a family, maybe you have this. I've always been of the mindset and the work ethic, just in general, even when I was in high school, or just being involved in extracurricular activities. So whether that was volunteering or being in 1,000 different clubs at school or
Right.
whatever the case may be, like I was always like that person. And, you know, joined a sorority, shout out to my Deltas, in, you know, college. And, you know, I helped start an organization in college and was a part of other organizations. And so it's always been in me. And so for me, what the CPA license did was it allowed me, I was already involved with NABA, and I was already involved with not-for-profits, but this opened the door in terms of involvement with the AICPA. And what that did was I've since been able to be on national committees. So I was on the Commission for Diversity and Inclusion, National Commission for Diversity and Inclusion with the AICPA for 3 years.
Okay.
Off of that, I've since been on, I was on one committee after that last year. This year I'm on 2 committees. One is a repeat and then one is a new one. And mind you, I was also a part of the AICPA Leadership Academy that they have for young professionals. I've done the Florida Society of CPAs, Rising Professionals, their leadership program as well. So again, it's just literally like, hey, here was this key that just unlocked this door. It literally just opened up this door to have access to opportunities, to see the workings of the profession from a different level. I mean, it was also an opportunity to have access to people that, and not to say I didn't necessarily have access to them before, I just didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I didn't know these people existed. I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know that these would be great people to have as connections and contacts and a part of my sphere of influence. And so it was just a great opportunity for me to really build my network and to be in a position where I always have options, and I'll always be in a space where, you know, I won't want for, in my opinion, want for anything, because I have my certification and because I have these connections. And now because I have all of this experience under my belt, even outside of being a tax professional, but literally just advocating for the profession, being involved in a profession. Yep. And again, just seeing the workings of it and where do I fit in and seeing where the gaps are. And, you know, I think you've done the same in the sense of what you're doing now. It's like, hey, this is a great profession, but how do we make it better in the space of our underrepresented candidates, you know, get them over the hump, have them become a part of that. And that's how you start, you know, just kind of building, you know, that up, you know, in terms of just making this a better profession for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like what you said. You were just saying how like it opens the doors, you know, there's a lot more opportunities that tend to just open up now that you've got that understanding from being a CPA, and then also, you know, officially becoming a CPA. It just seems like, you know, people understand that you are the level of professionalism that you bring to the table. So, and then, so what I wanted to do is ask you, what was your experience like with the AICPA and participating in the Diversity and Inclusiveness Commission, National Commission?
Oh, it was amazing. I served for 3 years. It's an appointed position, and it was just a great experience. I'll never forget my first meeting. So at least what I think what led me to getting that appointment was, so I did the AICPA Leadership Academy. So you apply for it and they pick, you know, out of however many 100 applications, they pick a pool of candidates to come to Durham, which is where the AICPA is headquartered. And so you have an opportunity to meet with folks, you know, pretty much in your same age group or experience level for the most part, from all over the country. You had somebody from Hawaii, had somebody from Puerto Rico. And so a part of that process at the end was saying, hey, how do you want to continue your involvement with the AICPA? And so you kind of fill out a survey. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to talk to Barry Melanson, who is the CEO of the AICPA, and express my interest in the National Commission on Diversity and Inclusion, which I was introduced to because of this kind of list of, hey, here are all these committees we have. Which, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that, hey, you know, the AICPA functions in the sense of here are all these committees that, you know, we have a large working group of folks really making things happen for the profession. And so having that conversation with Barry, just kind of putting my interest down in the commission. And then at a conference I went to, I actually met with, she was leading the National Commission on Diversity and Inclusion at the time, Kim Jong-go. I met her at a conference as well and got a chance to just introduce myself. But next thing I know, like a couple months down the line, which I didn't think I would, I didn't really think, that would come to fruition, just for the simple fact that the commission really is a partner-led commission. So you have somebody from all the big four, you have all of the CEOs from the affinity groups, so NABA, Ascend, et cetera. So you have really sitting at this table are folks who have been in this profession for 30 plus years and, really are seasoned in the sense of, I've been around and seen a lot. And so I remember sitting at my first commission meeting, just being like, how did I get, how did I get here? I don't think I said a word the whole meeting, because I was like, what do I have to add to this conversation? This is crazy. But on the commission, they have a young professional seat that's reserved specifically for somebody who is not necessarily partner level, but they still know you can add to the conversation. And so that's the seat that I filled for those 3 years. But it was a great experience, again, being in a room and having conversation, and for me to get a better understanding of where we are as a profession when it comes to our underrepresented groups, and then also what we're doing. And so, I had heard the statistics, our Black CPAs are 2% or less than 2% of CPAs, and we're at, 500,000. And so, and then at some point at another CPA event I went to, was regressing at some point as well, which is, like, how much further back can we go at this point? So, it was just something where it was great to see that this was at the forefront of the conversation that was being had for the profession. And then also seeing, like, what can I do to do that, to help with that. And so at the time, I was working in a management role at a firm here in South Florida, where I was basically working with the lead tax partner over the tax department of this organization, of this firm. So I wasn't in client service. I had transitioned out of client service to be in this management role. And so being on this commission and having conversations with folks, I was just like, so somebody said, and I won't say who it was, I don't know if she wants to put her name out there, but somebody said to me, if we always leave, if no one stays, how do we ever expect progress to happen? And again, it was one of those things where in that moment, I heard what I needed to hear in the moment where I was receptive to it, right? And so I was just like, dang, like, you're right, And so that really prompted me to start looking and thinking about, transitioning back into client service, which I ultimately did end up transitioning back into client service, and thinking like, okay, let me be a partner, let me, I'll be the martyr, I'll go out there and, climb this ladder and be an example for, hey, you can do this, right? Because I think what people have to understand is that when you are underrepresented, and I'll just speak from the Black experience, as a Black woman in this profession, some things that you just can't put into words, in the sense that I know this person said what they said, or this person did what they did, and, they call them microaggressions now, because either I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm young, combination of both, with all three, or whatever it is. And so, for me, it was having a Black woman in my firm at Deloitte that I could go to when I was having those type of days, or I was having those types of moments where I can go in and say, today's just not a good day, and she can talk me off the ledge. And she was just like, all right, calm down, let's talk about it, let's, work through this. And we already had a baseline understanding, so I didn't need to launch into everything. And then also my feelings or my concerns weren't discounted either, because she knows, hey, in this space, in this profession, these things do happen, right? And so for me, it was, I want to be that person for somebody else who's like, I'm having a tough day, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in the towel. This isn't for me. I'm going to go in the industry, and no knock on industry. But again, if nobody's staying at these firms to move up, how do we continue, how do we have that pipeline of people to ultimately look back and say, okay, we are making an impression, we are making a dent, and folks are seeing the value in doing this. So it was just a great experience. And again, it was a catalyst for me to kind of think about what's my role and what's my impression in this firm. And then also from, again, a Black experience, how do I impact other Black folks that are coming up, in this profession? So kind of like NABA's motto is lifting as we climb. That is literally something I hold true to my heart. And I will always love NABA, and I always, love what NABA does. And that's one of the reasons, is because it is lifting as you climb. It's not about you doing this on your own and getting there and being like, good luck to everybody else. you didn't get there by yourself. So it's ultimately your responsibility, you know, to look back and make sure you're helping somebody else, you know, get to the top, and especially somebody that looks like you, in my opinion.
Right. Very good. Yeah, and that was a great organization for doing that. And I also love their model because to me, when I first got introduced to NABA, National Association of Black Accountants, I felt good because it was an association for African Americans who are in accounting, and I was just like, wow, this is great, right? Like this is what we should all have. And then, you know, the motto, lifting as we climb, to me, we're just at words at first, and then, you know, as you start to have your career and you start to move through and get the experiences that you have, you realize, yeah, you know, it becomes very important for us to reach back and try to do something to inspire other people to come into the profession as well, who do have the same background that we have, because like, you know, we were saying, we're so underrepresented. And if we can do something to help inspire, to help open a door, then that helps to contribute to the broader goal of bringing more you know, African Americans or minorities into the profession. So that definitely is an organization that's worth joining and being involved in. And I've got a friend who's the president of the Tampa chapter right now, who calls me every once in a while. He's like, Chris, like, when are you circling back?
Yeah,
you know, I was,
Chris.
yeah, because I've been involved and I've been getting there, but I admit that I haven't been as involved as I should be recently, you know, so definitely want to do more to get back involved with NABA, because I had a very good experience with NABA as well. And I think that's the thing that that they're good for, is creating a place for you to have opportunities with connecting with people who look like you and who've been through similar experiences as you have. So definitely good to be involved with NABA. So what do you think, and we're gonna wind down here in a little bit because I know we've been talking for a while, but what do you think needs to happen in order for us to continue to push the needle forward on getting more African Americans and getting more minorities into the profession?
So I think it's a couple of prongs that go along with that. So initially the conversation is, how do you get African Americans exposed to the profession to begin with, right? Because again, you don't know what you don't know. So kind of to your point earlier about, you know, folks having family members that are in the profession, or, you know, some level of it. So that way you have an understanding of, oh, okay, this is something that I didn't know existed.
Right.
Or this is something that could be very lucrative, because it really can be very lucrative. Or this is something that can be interesting. And so A is having exposure. So, you know, kind of some things that we talk about just in general at the profession level is just saying, how do we get into, whether it's middle schools, you know, high schools, you know, introducing students to the profession and saying, this is what a day in life looks like, you know, one of those kind of things. Or, you know, even saying, hey, from a standpoint, thinking about who's your favorite artist, pick anybody, they have a CPA on, you know, on staff, you know, absolutely. Like that's a given. A lawyer, CPA, like they got a team of folks that are making sure that their business is taken care of. And so that's, you know, another path to go, you know, paint the sexy part of it, right? Like here's an opportunity to really kind of connect with them in terms of what we do. And so one of the struggles is that, you know, in something where to a larger degree on our backs, to be like, we're going to step up and go into schools, we're going to step up and try to find those relationship connections within the schools and have consistent touch points with students in order to make them aware and have a real understanding of what we're doing. You know, it's truly important. And I would just, you know, want to do a plug. So Kimberly Ellison Taylor, who's a past AICPA chair, the only Black chair that we've had, who's actually just an amazing professional and woman. She has a video that was done, I think the Maryland Society of CPAs did it, but in this video, she talks about how she goes back, even at the elementary level, and talks to students about, you know, what it's like to be a CPA and what does that mean? And those are the kind of things that have to happen to get exposure. So that's even a thought in their mind, because think about it. We have, you know, there's STEM, right? STEM is like hot, it's sexy, it's coding, it's all of these great things.
Right.
It also has funding behind it that, you know, they're getting into schools, you know, on a broad basis. Or you have things like TV shows. So you have a Grey's Anatomy or a Scrubs or whatever that also promotes the medical profession, right? So here's something that's literally at the forefront of everybody's, you know, thought process when you're just watching TV. Or you have cop shows that, you know, whether it's SVU or whatever. And listen, I'm like, I'm gonna be
How to Get Away with Murder, which is
right. How to Get Away with Murder? You know, so lawyer, exactly.
Yeah.
So How to Get Away with Murder or Suits or whatever. You know,
Right.
so you have all of these professions that really almost just have, and it's not free publicity, but it's free in the sense that their associations aren't paying for it, right? Like they are just.
They build these wonderful stories around the profession, you know, and it really inspires you to want to go into law or go into things like that. And you're right. I don't think I've seen one show that talks about the life of a CPA.
If y'all got one, let me know. Send it to me. I want to watch it. But the only thing we really had was like The Accountant with Ben Affleck, right? Like, and honestly, I started watching it. I didn't get through the whole movie, but that's just me. I'm not a movie person, so I couldn't even tell you what was it about. But I say all that to say, like, we don't have like all of these kind of media outlets or streams to have touch points with students. And so it's really incumbent upon us to put forth that energy and effort to just expose them to it, right? So that's number one. And number two is once we actually, and the two, well, I'll say two is once they go to university, they go to college, it's saying, okay, now major in accounting, right? Like you have to go through this process of majoring in accounting, go through the recruiting process. Again, if you don't know what you don't know, you haven't been exposed and you don't have anybody telling you this is what the recruiting process looks like. You get to your senior year. And I met students like that where they did major in accounting, but they got to their senior year and they're like, oh shoot, I should have been looking for an internship, you know, in my sophomore year. Yeah, you know, exactly. And so, you know, it's just like, what do I do now? How do I catch up? I feel like I'm so behind that I can't even catch up, right? And then there's this, you know, this sense of like, well, should I even try at this point, right? And so I think we just have to educate, again, speaking from the Black experience, our Black candidates, our Black students to say this is, and that's what I love about NABA and the student conferences. They have one for every region, but the student conferences really speak to this is what the process looks like. This is what you should be doing. And employers come on site, they have interviews, you know, they have resume, they have sessions, they do all of these things to really prepare the students to say, this is what it is that you need to be doing. Don't be left behind in a sense, right? So that's the second piece of it. And then the third piece is once, you know, from a hiring standpoint, is that making sure that we are removing as much bias out of the hiring process as possible. So, and again, that's not incumbent upon Black folks to do because we're not always the one in hiring positions. Right. So firms and organizations have to make sure that they're doing their due diligence to be sure that they are hiring people that are, you know, not going to, and we all have biases, right? But they're going to keep their biases in check, or they're going to be doing some kind of training or D&I committees or whatever the case may be to say, when we go through this hiring process, because it's proven, you know, to your point about statistics, it's proven that, you know, part of the break in the pipeline is the hiring process. So I can have great grades and all this kind of stuff, but if people are putting up candidates, again, even the resume test, right? If you have a Black sounding name, a white sounding name, you know, we already have some issues depending on who's the one making decisions. Right. And so, you know, at the end of the day, then we have to make sure that there is some type of systems in place to make sure that there's as much bias removed out of the hiring process as possible. So people even have an opportunity to get into these firms and organizations. Then once you bring them into the firms and organizations, how do you then keep them? Because part of it is diversity and inclusion. So you can bring in Black people all day. You can bring in our Hispanic, you know, brothers and sisters all day. You can bring in Asian people all day. But if you're not having an inclusive environment, those folks are not going to stay. Like, why would I stay somewhere where I don't feel welcomed? Especially again, when this profession, and I'm going to just speak from a public accounting profession, where you work so much, you know, you're literally in the office all day long with these people. And if you don't feel good about what you're doing and feel like you're a part of a team, you're not going to be there a long time. You're not going to stay to try to make partner. And then are you even going to be able to, if people don't connect with you in the sense that they don't feel like, oh, well, we don't have anything in common. So it's more like a 4-prong kind of thing, that pipeline to get you all the way through. So once you're there, do I feel included? Have I had explicit conversations with leadership? Hey, I want you to be a partner here. I want you to be a manager here. I see this in you, you know, and I want you to thrive. How can I help you? And not just say, do what I did, because your path as a white man or a white woman is not my path. It's 100% not my path. And understanding that that's okay is going to be different. But you also have to make sure that you're advocating and that you champion for me, just like you would champion for anybody else. Right. So then, you know, hopefully getting folks into that kind of space and getting them moved up, you know, keeping them interested, keeping them engaged, and, you know, ultimately making it to whether it's partner, whether it's CFO, whether it's CEO, even, you know, so yeah, so I just think that it's a comprehensive kind of task that we have at hand in order to really make some impact and see some change and see some movement in the needle in terms of the numbers when it comes to our underrepresented CPAs, for sure.
Well, thank you for that. I think that was a great answer to that, because it sounds like we need to establish ways to support someone throughout the process, because it is a long process. Like you have, before you even get to college, it's the exposure to it while you're in your school, your studies, you know, high school, middle school. Then once you get to college, making the decision to actually major, and then actually going through the process of graduating. And after that, the recruitment process, which can be definitely something, a challenge to work through. And then after that, once you actually are in, how do you be supported? How are you able to connect with the people that you're working with in these firms and these organizations, so that way you can feel like you can build a sustaining career. So I think that that is definitely, I'm glad that you shared that. That's one of the reasons why I like to have these conversations, because I want us who have been through the process, who are now have a responsibility as professionals to figure out a way to have some open dialogue and identify how we can improve. And I think it requires the contribution of everyone, right? In all the different fashions that we all have. And that, you know, the reason that we have this channel is to create just one more way that we can contribute to those objectives. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing everything that you shared. I know it's been about an hour now, so I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then we'll adjourn. There's a stigma that the accounting profession, and accountants are the green hat, boring, at the calculator type of people. And like you said earlier, it's not really always so, you know, quote unquote sexy, right, and attractive. But I find that we do a lot of things that are very, very interesting and can be very attractive for a career and profession. So can you share with me one experience that you had as an accountant or CPA that brought you a lot of joy and pride for working in this profession?
For me, it's been two things. One has just been the ability to, again, mentor, to coach, to be a positive influence on, you know, Black candidates and associates, and, you know, being a resource for them, being a sounding board for them, hopefully giving them good advice, you know, really being able to make an impact on folks, because I knew how good I felt when somebody invested time and energy into me. And that to this day meant the world to me. And these are people that are still in my life and I still appreciate and will always be a part of my testimony. And so, you know, being able to say, okay, what do I do to make sure that other folks have access to people that they know that care about them genuinely, you know, and it's not just about, you know, how's work going, but, you know, what's going on in your life. Like, it's, you know, even as we record, this is just a lot going on in our country where, you know, not to date it, but in a pandemic, healthcare crisis, we're in a, what's, unrest in terms of racial inequality and injustice that's going on. And so those things don't stop when you come into work, right? Like, they really don't. I think people really have in this space understood that they get a better sense that it doesn't. And so, you know, a lot of people are going through a lot of things. And so how do you support people, not only, again, from a professional standpoint, but just from a people standpoint? Like, you know, how are you doing today? Like, are you okay? I remember when I was in that management role, HR joked one time, they were like, we got to get you a couch. They're like, because there would literally be like a line of people, like, and I'm not even joking, like outside my door. So like, we got to get you a couch in here, because you take the time to talk to people, like, and not one of those things where you're passing like how you're doing before the person responds, you're already down the hallway. But, you know, it's been time. I would have a box of tissue on my desk and the tissue would be going, you know, just people are always going through something, right? So really taking a vested interest in what's happening and following up with them. And again, just being somebody that I get people that are, which is crazy, but I get people referred to me at work that say, I don't even work with them. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time, or this is going on. And somebody will say, oh, you should talk to Ebony. you know, and, you know, they'll reach out to me. And so it's just great to, it's not only the people that I have direct contact with, but the fact that they're speaking of me highly when I'm not even in the room. And then also saying, you know, this is somebody that you should have in your corner, or this is somebody you should talk to because she gives great advice. So that's been the highlight above anything in terms of being able to connect with people and make an impact, because it's all about purpose for me. In any space that I'm in, and how am I contributing, especially how am I contributing to the Black community, like that above everything is important for me, just because, you know, of everything that is set to, that needs to be dismantled, you know, in terms of getting, you know, an equal footing in this space in corporate America in general. So that's the first thing. The other thing is travel. So I travel a ton for just personal, whatever experience. And so part of being in these spaces outside of work, again, being involved in these activities, whether it's the AICPA, I was actually the chair for the IRS. I was appointed chair for our IRS committee of citizens. So I was on that committee for 3 years, appointed chair my last year. So in that space, in the AICPA space, even when I was at, you know, Deloitte, I'm having an opportunity to travel to different places and meet different people. And as much as I'm an introvert, I'm also, I could go anywhere and talk to somebody. When we travel, my sister's just like, can't take you anywhere. Like, I meet people in Iceland on the bus. I meet people on the London Eye when we went to the UK. I meet people on the plane. It's just like literally just talking to people, right? And so being able to have, again, exposure and meeting new people and expanding my network and expanding my sphere of influence from a standpoint of people that just make you better as a professional, as a person, as a critical thinker, as a thought leader, you know, as a leader in general, has just been a great experience to be able to have access and exposure to people, you know, that make me better so that I can be better for what I do professionally, but also I can be better for other people as well.
Good, very good. Yes, yes, amen. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good that you can have such a rewarding experience out of your career, because, you know, we have families and we have personal lives, but a good part of our lives is the work that we do. So you definitely want to be doing something that's going to bring you some rewarding experiences. Yes.
Definitely.
Okay. So we talked about a lot. We talked about diversity and inclusion. We talked about being a CPA, studying for the CPA exam. What led you to the CPA? You've given us so much, so much. So I just want to say thank you so much for contributing, for being here, for participating. I hope that what we can do one day in the future is pick up this conversation again and maybe talk about some other important topics that would be good for our listeners. But for now, I think that what you contributed today has been awesome. It's going to help a lot of people. So I want to say again, thank you so much. And if you can hang tight for me, I'm gonna, after I stop the recording, then we'll just do a small wrap up after that. But thank you so much, Miss Ebony Moss, CPA, for participating on CPA Diversity.
Thank you for having me.